Our Deputy Prime Minister Sergei Ivanov says the plane crash that killed 44 people in northwestern Russia was most likely caused by a combination of bad weather and pilot error. He added that it resembled the crash in which the late Polish president died in April last year. Around midnight on Sunday, the RusAir flight en route from Moscow to Petrozavodsk crash-landed on a highway just 1 kilometer from its destination. Well, 8 passengers survived the incident and are being treated in hospital. Let's cross live to RT's Peter Oliver, who is following this story for us. Peter, tell us more about what we know about how this tragedy unfolded.
Well, it's still very early days to finding out actually what happened to cause this plane crash. What we do know, though, is that this Tupolev Tu-134 plane crash-landed on a highway around 1 kilometer away from its intended destination of Petrozavodsk Airport in northwestern Russia. The plane split into pieces as it hit the highway and eventually burst into flames. Now, the plane came precariously close to sliding into a row of houses. Now, if that had been the case, then the death toll, the number of killed, would have been much higher than it already is. 44 at the moment, 44 people killed in that crash, 8 people surviving. Now, fortunately, that plane didn't go into those row of houses, and nearby residents, passers-by, anybody in the general area, they were the first people on the scene, not the emergency services, because the plane didn't try to land inside the territory of the airport. Now, we've been hearing some stories of genuine heroism coming out from those that were first on the scene.
I carried 3 people out of the wreckage. One was either a girl or a woman. I could not tell, but she was lighter than the man. It was hard to see, it was dark. Then there was a man. He also wasn't heavy, he was lighter than me. Then we carried out 2 more people from the wreckage in the middle of the road. Another man reached out his hand towards me, but I couldn't make it to him. Everything started exploding. I could not get any closer. Everything was engulfed by fire. I'm sorry.
The flight recorders have been retrieved from the wreckage of that plane, and investigators are currently going through analysing that data to determine exactly what happened. Now, the video footage that we've seen shows the plane hitting the tops of trees as it came in for this emergency landing. Also, it severed power lines. Now, the severing of those power lines caused a temporary blackout at the airport, plunging the runway into darkness. Now, it's not known whether the fact that the pilots couldn't see where the runway was a factor in them deciding to try and make this forced emergency landing. We'll only know that when we hear the data, the voice recordings perhaps from the cockpit. Now, the investigators who are looking into this plane crash aren't ruling out any possibilities as of yet.
Investigators continue their work at the site of the tragedy. The debris there is spread across a 300-metre radius. The flight recorder has already been found. Communication recordings are being analysed. Forensic analysis is being carried out. We're looking into several versions of what caused the tragedy. These include the human factor, such as an error of the crew or the ground services, severe weather conditions, technical failure, and several other potential causes.
Peter, are you hearing anything about what experts are making out of all of these different theories?
Well, we've heard from Deputy Prime Minister Sergei Ivanov saying that he believes, from what he's seen, the data he's been given, that this crash was caused through a combination of pilot error and bad weather. There was very thick fog on the evening in question, and that may have played a role in causing this crash. Now, experts who have studied these type of incidents before have corroborated what Mr. Ivanov has said, also drawing comparisons between this crash and the fatal crash which killed Polish President Lech Kaczynski last year. So they are saying that from what the preliminary data, what they've seen, it looks like a combination of pilot error and the bad weather caused this fatal crash.
I don't think anything would go wrong with the plane itself. In 40 years of operation, the Tupolev 134 has proved an extremely reliable aircraft. In previous catastrophes, human error was always to blame, and the same is true here. The pilot should have made a second landing approach. This is exactly what happened to the Polish presidential airplane.
We know, of course, that 8 survivors are in hospital. What are we hearing about their condition, Peter?
Well, the latest from the survivors is that 6 of those are actually currently on their way to Moscow, where they'll receive further treatment. 2 are in a critical condition and they can't be moved at the moment. We heard earlier on that the only reason that they were able to survive this terrifying ordeal was down to the heroism of those who responded on the scene immediately. Now, 44 people died in this plane crash, and the relatives of those 44 have been arriving just behind me at Domodedovo Airport, where they've been receiving grief counselling from the Emergencies Ministry. So those 6 of those 82 survived, currently on their way back to Moscow too, in such a serious condition. They remain in Petrozavodsk, unable to travel.
All right, and you, of course, will continue to keep us updated throughout the day. For now, Peter Oliver, live from Moscow. Thanks for that. Russian space expert Yuri Karash, who is also a pilot, told RT that poor crew training could be at the root of the tragedy.
There are different airliners like Aeroflot, RusAir. These are very big and very well established airlines. But there are also regional airlines which sometimes consist of just 2 or 3 aircraft, and God knows how well they're technically maintained and how well are trained their crews.
We'll stay with RT as we continue our coverage of that plane crash in northwest Russia.